I could talk to you about a myriad of things, about my media career. I could talk to you about like to be on a powerful platform like radio, or what it's like to build a business. But instead, this day, on this gorgeous day, I decided to talk to you about something that I've been wrestling with for the past 2 years, and that is how to love our children. And this has been a question in my life for the past 2 years because of a very important pivotal moment that took place. And now, hindsight, when I look back, I can see that there was a cleansing that was brewing. I was tired, my days were long, and they all just flowed one into the other. They all started looking the same. But meanwhile, when I looked around, I had built a successful business. I had successfully transitioned my career from talk radio to music radio. Work was good. My youngest child was being as expected, gentlemanly, kind boy, devoted to family and friends. And my oldest child had finished high school. She was doing her first year at university at one of the best institutions in this country. She was living out of home, closer to school, and really exploring and exploiting life after school, reveling in being a young adult. And this is the picture of progress that I had worked very hard for as a single parent for many years. I'd worked painstakingly hard to get to that point. But the reality is that I was feeling anxious. I was emotionally and physically exhausted. I was detached from the highs and the lows, and I was becoming increasingly cynical about life, about success, about all sorts of things. And it was on Sunday, the 22nd of October, 2017, I decided to forego my usual yoga class and decided to lie in, have a slow start to the day. And I was woken up by the incessant calls from a friend. And I woke up, picked up the phone, and the first thing he said was, "Are you guys okay?" And unknowingly I said, "Yeah, we are." And he realized that I had no clue what was happening. And he said, "You haven't looked at Twitter, have you?" And with those words, a feeling of dread came upon me. A fear of things unknown just rushed over my body. And I immediately knew that something had happened on Twitter that had to do with my oldest child, my daughter. And as I said, she was a first-year student enjoying life after high school. They had gone out the night before as a group of friends to attend a concert of a music group that they absolutely adore. But in the early hours of the morning, someone unknown to us had tweeted falsehoods about the group of girls and specifically targeted my daughter. And so in her efforts to disprove these falsehoods, the situation inadvertently got worse, and it sparked a deluge of cyberbullying. Some of the worst things that you could have said about someone. False tweets were created and were attributed to her. And I had decided to enter the fray, decided to enter these feeding waters to defend her because I was determined that she wouldn't drown alone. By the end of the attack, by the end of the cyberbullying, by the end of this piranha-like feeding frenzy, over 40,000 tweets had been posted about her and I. And as I said, some of the ugliest, most meanest things that you could say. And I stand here confidently and say that the allegations and the falsehoods that were posted were indeed a lie because a subsequent investigation proved them so. But what it left was absolute devastation. It was one of the most painful days of our lives. We supported each other firmly in the aftermath of the cyberbullying. But beyond that, we had to pull apart, find our own healing, and then find a way to come back together again. What it precipitated after that was that she started cutting, something she'd never done before. She suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, depression. She's had bouts of depression, panic attacks, as well as anxiety. We both sought counseling, and I've since discovered a deep passion for the outdoors, for hiking. It's what gives me sanity. And I've also discovered the beauty and the magic of breath work. And through lots of tears, lots of long, deep moments together, we've also gotten a sense of how to relate differently, how to exist and occupy the space that we share as family, as parent and child. She went on to get professional help, as I was relating, and it's been quite a journey since then. The road to healing has been very, very challenging. And for me, it has brought about an unfolding as a parent. I describe it as an unfolding because after all this time, the wrestling that we've done, we emerge and we continue to emerge. There are some things that I want to share with you today that I look back on over the past 2 years as profound lessons that I've gotten from this experience, from being a parent to this particular child. And the first lesson is that our children are here to live their lives. They're here to live their purpose. They're not a 2.0 version. Their lives are not a 2.0 version of ours. They're not here to live according to a script that we craft for them. Because who are we? We're simply here to take care of them, to bring them into this world, to take care of them long enough, make sure they survive long enough for them to realize their purpose and their potential. When this incident happened, I kicked into gear as a parent would. I was raised by a single parent who brought us up on a nurse's salary. She did it with great focus, she did it with grace, but she also did it with a lot of control. And in raising my own children as a freelancer, this is an industry that has a lot of uncertainty. So in order for you to build a life and to build a life that works, you need a system, you need a tight system. And so I raised my children with a lot of control. And so when the cyberbullying happened, I did what I always do. I come up with a plan. I designed a strategy because I said to her, if you follow this, if we do this, you will emerge whole again on the other side. And my frustration erupted because, of course, my child would say, no, I'm going to do it my own way. She did the counseling. She followed through with that. What I didn't want for her was for her to return to social media. But instead she did. She went back boldly and bravely and decided to share her story. She shared images of the cutting. She talked about the bad days, the hard days when she wrestled with depression, when she was asking herself deep questions about why this happened. She was very open. And I now look back and I look at the strategy that I had presented that she rejected and can see that in it there was a sense of saying, you should be ashamed of this. You should hold this shame by not returning to the world. By saying to her, stay away, I was also saying that this is your shame. And she went out boldly, and this was an incredible lesson to live freely for me. When she started her tertiary education, she had decided to go for a degree that she wasn't entirely passionate about, but was an interest. But through this process, she has discovered what she's truly passionate about. You can imagine growing up as a child in Soweto for me, and growing up under the unjust laws of apartheid and seeing how it suffocated and smothered the potential of not just our parents and their predecessors, their hopes and dreams, but how it suffocated ours as well. I couldn't finish my degree because we ran out of money, had to drop out and study later in life. So when your child comes to you to say that, I'm going to do something else, I'm dropping this degree, you can imagine the rage. And I realized that as parents, when our children do not abide by what we want, we start to withhold the love. We close the taps of love. We silence, we ignore, we start to withdraw and withhold our love from them. And that was also a great lesson, because now I know that by insisting on our plans and our ambitions for their lives, we only delay their discovery of their purpose. We send them on a detour that could entirely be unnecessary for their lives. The other lesson that I learned is about control. I think it's a beautiful design because a parent and child are it's the closest relationship there is in life, in my view. And needing to exercise control over her decisions was this challenge that we were now posed with. And over and above that, in the deep and hard conversations we had, it soon became apparent that it wasn't just control that I was exercising, but it was also a need to appear perfect and a need to manage fear. And so that's the beauty of this intimate relationship. So often as parents, we think that we are the holders of the knowledge about life and the world. But meanwhile, our children can teach us so much about ourselves. They bring into sharp focus areas of who we are that might be limiting, that might be damaging to us. And so having accepted these lessons from her, I find that I'm less tightly wound up. Less tightly wound up. And I've also discovered that it's okay not to have to manage for every single detail. The parent that I was is that I would plan, I would make sure we execute, I would plan to the degree where I would want to anticipate how we would feel, down to how we should feel after we've done something. It sounds ridiculous, right? And who wants that job? Who wants that job ultimately? And for me, it was a case of recognizing that I wasn't living fully free. So that's one of the gifts that it's given us as well. And it made me realize that control is like living in a golden prison. And it's freed us of having expectations of each other that we shouldn't necessarily have. For instance, now, I judge less about their choices, about their careers, about their interests. I'm not as judgmental about how they choose to appear in the world. And I just take a step back to say, this is your life. This is your journey. Because ultimately their gifts, their journeys, and their purpose are theirs to live out, and they might not even be connected to the families that they come through. This was my one of the lessons I thought to share today. Throughout my career in the media business, I've always been very careful not to be tabloid fodder. I've always been careful not to put a foot wrong and not be part of the smut and sensationalism that often drives the stories that we see pertaining to personalities in this country. And I spent a very long time trying to avoid controversy. But now I realize that all I was doing was making it camp right outside my door. I was making it camp right there, day after day, month after month, year after year. What it's made me realize is that there are times when we also create tension. The fact that that which we resist grows, and we inadvertently create tension and unintentionally create this monster. And this very controversy that I'd been avoiding struck me when it did with absolute ferocity. And it struck me at my most personal and my most precious, one of my children. And so I've learned in life that just go. Don't fight too hard. Some things you don't have to resist, because it doesn't mean they're not going to happen. Just because you resist them does not mean they're not going to happen. And if they do happen, so what? You will deal with them anyway. You will deal with them. So those are the 3 lessons, ladies and gentlemen. But I also want to leave you with my +1. And my +1 is that cyberbullying is devastating. It degrades, it humiliates, and it slanders. Don't be a part of it. Because your post and your words could be the act that causes someone and leads someone to an act of self-harm. Thank you.